What if I told you Donald Trump didn't rise because America chose him, but because America needed him? What if behind the headlines, the tweets, the rallies, and the chaos, there was a hidden moment, one decision, that changed the psychological direction of the United States forever? And almost nobody talks about it. In the early 1980s, long before politics, long before red hats and packed arenas, Donald Trump was obsessed with something most billionaires ignored. Not money, not fame, not even power. He was obsessed with attention. While Wall Street chased quiet influence, Trump chased loud presence. He didn't want to be rich in private. He wanted to be recognized in public. People remember Trump Tower. People remember The Apprentice. But very few people talk about what insiders later called the mirror strategy. Trump used to walk into rooms and watch people before they noticed him. He studied faces, who leaned forward, who crossed their arms, who smiled fake, who looked angry without knowing why. An old media consultant once said something chilling. Trump wasn't speaking to crowds. He was diagnosing them. Factories were closing. Small towns were shrinking. News channels were turning politics into entertainment. America was slowly becoming angry, confused, and addicted to screens. Trump saw it before most politicians did. He realized something dangerous. People no longer wanted leaders. They wanted symbols, heroes, villains, fighters, enemies. So Trump didn't build a political image. He built a character. The billionaire who talks like a regular guy. The outsider who lived inside the system. The confident man in a country losing confidence. Every insult, every controversy, every viral moment was not random. It was fuel. The more people hated him, the more visible he became. The more visible he became, the more real he felt. By the time 2015 arrived, millions of people didn't see Trump as a candidate. They saw him as a voice they already had in their heads. And that's when he made the move everyone thought was a joke. I'm running for president. News anchors laughed. Politicians smirked. Late-night shows celebrated. But behind closed doors, a few media executives were not laughing. One of them reportedly said, "If he stays on camera long enough, he doesn't need votes. He'll create them." Because in the modern world, attention comes before belief. And belief comes before power. Trump understood something ancient, something almost forgotten. If you control the story, you don't have to control the truth. But what almost nobody talks about is the private shift that happened after his first massive rallies. After he saw the crowds. After he heard the chants. After he realized how fast emotion could move millions. Something changed in the way he spoke. In the way he framed enemies. In the way he described America itself. It was no longer a campaign. It was a conflict narrative. And once a country enters a story of conflict, it becomes very hard to exit. Because conflict gives meaning. And meaning is more addictive than hope. Behind the scenes, advisors noticed he stopped asking, "How do we win?" and started asking, "How do we divide attention?" Because division multiplies cameras. Division multiplies clicks. Division multiplies loyalty. And loyalty is stronger than logic. But the most interesting part is not how Trump used the system. It's the growing evidence that by the end, the system was also using him. Media ratings exploded. Social platforms grew faster. Politics became daily drama. Trump was no longer just a man. He was a signal, a living headline, a walking algorithm. And when the White House finally became his stage, the question inside powerful circles quietly changed from, "What will Trump do next?" to something much darker. What happens to America when Trump is no longer there to carry all of this emotion? Because by then, he wasn't just leading attention. He was containing it. And when a symbol becomes big enough, removing it doesn't erase the feeling. It releases it.by 2017. Something strange was happening behind the curtains of American power. Trump was in the White House, but the White House was no longer the center of gravity. The real center was reaction. Markets reacted. Media reacted. Other nations reacted. Social platforms reacted. And Trump watched. People thought he was addicted to Twitter. Insiders later suggested something different. He was addicted to feedback loops. Post, outrage, defense, praise, hate, repeat. Each cycle showed him exactly where America's emotional nerves were exposed. Fear, bride, humiliation, nostalgia, anger. Every rally became less about policy and more about synchronization. Thousands of hearts beating to the same sentences, the same pauses, the same enemies. Psychologists have a word for this state. They call it emotional convergence, when large groups begin to feel before they think. Trump didn't invent it, but he became the most powerful modern trigger of it. And then something happened that rarely gets discussed. His private meetings changed tone. Early on, he asked for numbers, votes, states, polls. Later, he asked different questions. How fast did it spread? Who reacted first? Which clip went viral without ads? These are not political questions. These are signal questions, the kind used in advertising, warfare, behavior design, because by then, the presidency had quietly evolved into something else. A live experiment on narrative, on loyalty, on digital emotion, and Trump was both the subject and the instrument. Some former staff described moments when decisions were delayed, not for strategy, but to see how the public mood would bend on its own, as if the reaction itself had become more valuable than the action. This is the part most documentaries skip, because it's unsettling. It suggests that Trump was no longer just trying to change America. America was being used to study itself, and the findings were powerful. They showed that outrage travels faster than facts, that identity beats evidence, that enemies are more motivating than goals. And once those rules are proven, they don't disappear when one man leaves. They become templates. By the time impeachment, investigations, and non-stop scandals filled the air, Trump's position in the story had shifted again. He was no longer the billionaire outsider. He was no longer even the president. He had become a living test case. How much instability can a democracy absorb before instability becomes normal? And then came the realization inside media and political circles that nobody said out loud. Trump might lose office, but the Trump structure could not lose, because it no longer depended on him. It depended on short attention spans,
permanent outrage,
tribal identity, and endless screens, which meant something far more unsettling. Removing Trump wouldn't end the era. It would free it, because when a single symbol holds millions of emotions, he also contains them. Take him out of the center, and the emotions don't vanish. They scatter into movements, influencers, new figures, new conflicts. And that's when some insiders began to quietly fear something bigger than Trump himself. That he wasn't the disease. He was the symptom that taught the system how to behave. And once a system learns, it doesn't unlearn. But here is the